The rain fell like needles against Emma's face as she pulled her brother through the forest. Her fingers were numb, locked around Ethan's wrist in a grip she refused to release no matter how much he stumbled. "Emma, I can't see," Ethan gasped, his voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. "Just keep moving," she said, though her own vision was blurred by rain and darkness. "We can't stop." Behind them, somewhere in the black tangle of trees, she could still hear the distant shouts. The beams of flashlights swept through the woods like hunting eyes. The social workers from Riverside Group Home had discovered their empty beds an hour ago, and now they were searching the forest with the methodical patience of people who had done this many times before. Emma and Ethan were 9 years old. Identical twins with dark hair and gray eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. 3 months earlier, their parents had died when their car slid off an icy mountain road during a winter storm. With no known relatives and no will specifying guardianship, the twins had been placed in temporary state care. The group home was not supposed to be permanent. That's what the woman with the clipboard had told them. "Just until we find you a nice family," she had said with a smile that never reached her eyes. But Emma had learned quickly that the group home was a holding pen where children waited to be processed, separated, shipped to different foster families in different states. She had overheard the director on the phone 2 nights ago. "Yes, we have interest from 2 separate families. One in Ohio, one in Texas. They each want 1 child, not both. Twins are harder to place together." Emma had felt something cold settle in her chest. They were going to be separated. Split apart like pieces of furniture being divided after an estate sale. That night, she had whispered to Ethan through the darkness of their shared room. "We have to leave." "Where would we go?" he had asked. "Anywhere. As long as we're together." Now they ran through a forest they didn't know, in mountains they had never explored, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a desperate hope that anywhere would be better than being torn apart. The ground rose steeply. Emma's lungs burned as they climbed, grabbing at roots and rocks to pull themselves upward. The rain had turned the earth to mud that sucked at their shoes with every step. Then through a break in the trees Emma saw it. A castle. She stopped so suddenly that Ethan crashed into her back. "What?" he started, but the word died when he followed her gaze. It rose from the mountaintop like something from a storybook, all gray stone and sharp towers silhouetted against the storm-dark sky. Ivy covered the walls in thick blankets. Narrow windows stared down at them like dark eyes. A single road, cracked and overgrown, wound up the final slope to a massive wooden door. "Is that real?" Ethan whispered. Emma didn't answer. She was already moving toward it. The castle loomed larger as they climbed. Up close, Emma could see the decay. Stones had fallen from the walls. The iron gate hung crooked on broken hinges. Statues that might once have been lions or gargoyles had eroded into shapeless lumps of stone. But it was shelter. And shelter was all they needed. The wooden door was easily 12 feet tall, bound with iron and covered in carvings that the rain had worn smooth. Emma pressed her small hands against it and pushed. At first nothing happened. Then, with a groan that sounded almost alive, the door swung inward. Warmth hit her face. Not the stale cold she had expected, but actual warmth, as if a fire burned somewhere inside. Emma and Ethan stepped across the threshold into a grand entrance hall. The floor was black and white marble, laid out in a checkerboard pattern. A chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, its crystals catching light from somewhere Emma couldn't identify. Tapestries lined the walls, depicting hunting scenes and formal portraits of people in old-fashioned clothes. And then Emma saw what made her breath catch. Candles. Dozens of them, placed in iron sconces along the walls, burning with steady flames that cast dancing shadows across the stone. "Someone's here," Ethan whispered. Emma's heart hammered. The candles were fresh. Their wax hadn't dripped far. Someone had lit them recently. Someone was maintaining this place. She listened, straining to hear past the sound of the storm outside. At first, only silence. Then, from somewhere deep in the castle, she heard it. Footsteps. Slow and deliberate, echoing through distant corridors. Emma grabbed Ethan's hand and pulled him to the side of the entrance hall, behind a tall wooden cabinet. They pressed themselves against the cold stone wall and waited. The footsteps grew closer. Then stopped. Emma held her breath. Minutes passed. The footsteps didn't resume. Whoever was walking had stopped somewhere out of sight. "What do we do?" Ethan breathed against her ear. Emma's mind raced. They couldn't go back outside. The storm was worsening and the social workers might still be searching the forest. But staying here meant sharing space with someone unknown. Someone who lived in an abandoned castle on a forgotten mountain. "We find a place to hide," she decided. "Just for tonight. Just until the storm passes. They moved carefully through the entrance hall toward a corridor that branched to the left. The candlelight followed them, sconces lighting the way as if the castle itself wanted them to explore. The corridor opened into a library. Bookshelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with leather-bound volumes. A fireplace dominated one wall, and in front of it sat two high-backed chairs and a low table. On the table sat a plate of cookies and 2 glasses of milk. Still warm. Steam rose from the glasses. Emma and Ethan stared at the food. "That wasn't there before," Ethan said. "We didn't see this room before," Emma replied, but her voice shook. "Someone had prepared this. Recently. Maybe while they were hiding in the entrance hall." Emma's stomach growled. They hadn't eaten since the group home's dinner hours ago. The cookies looked homemade. Chocolate chip, perfectly golden. "Don't touch it," Emma said, though she desperately wanted to. They backed away from the library and continued exploring. Room after room revealed the same impossible contradiction. The castle was clearly old, its stones weathered by centuries. But everything inside was maintained. Preserved. Dust-free. Furniture polished. Floors swept. In what appeared to be a dining hall, a long table was set for 12 people. Plates, silverware, crystal glasses, all arranged with formal precision. Fresh flowers sat in a centerpiece vase. In a music room, a grand piano sat open, sheet music resting on its stand as if someone had just finished playing. And everywhere the candles burned. They found a staircase and climbed to the second floor. The corridor here was lined with doors, each one closed. Emma opened the first door carefully. A bedroom. A child's bedroom. 2 small beds sat against opposite walls, made up with clean white sheets and thick quilts. A bookshelf held children's books. A toy chest sat open, revealing wooden blocks and stuffed animals. On a desk near the window, coloring books lay open next to a jar of crayons. On each bed, folded neatly, were sets of dry clothes. Children's clothes. 1 set for a girl. 1 set for a boy. Exactly their sizes. "Emma," Ethan's voice was very small. "I'm scared." So was she. But she had promised herself she would protect her brother no matter what. "It's okay," she lied. Someone lives here. Maybe they're kind. Maybe they help people. Then why haven't they shown themselves?" Emma had no answer. They changed out of their wet clothes quickly, grateful for the warmth of dry fabric even as questions multiplied in Emma's mind. The clothes fit perfectly. The shoes by the beds were exactly their sizes. As if someone had known they were coming. Exhaustion hit Emma like a physical weight. They had been running for hours. Her legs ached. Her eyes burned. Ethan was already swaying on his feet. "We'll sleep here," Emma decided. "Just for a few hours. Then we'll figure out what to do." She locked the bedroom door and wedged a chair under the handle. It wouldn't stop a determined adult, but it might give them warning. Emma climbed into one bed, Ethan into the other. Despite her fear, despite the strangeness of everything, Emma felt herself sinking into the mattress. The bed was soft. Warmer than anything she'd slept in since before her parents died. "Emma?" Ethan called from across the room. "Yeah. Do you think Mom and Dad would be mad? That we ran away?" Emma's throat tightened. "No. I think they'd want us to stay together. No matter what." She heard Ethan shift in his bed. "I miss them." "Me too." Outside, the storm continued its assault on the mountain. But inside the castle, in this impossible bedroom prepared by invisible hands, Emma and Ethan finally slept. Emma woke to silence. The storm had passed. Pale morning light filtered through the bedroom window, illuminating dust motes that drifted through the air like tiny stars. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory returned in a rush. The castle. The candles. The impossible preparations. She sat up and looked across the room. Ethan was still asleep, his dark hair spread across the pillow. He looked peaceful. Younger than his 9 years. Emma slipped out of bed and went to the window. The view took her breath away. They were high on a mountain, surrounded by forest that stretched in every direction like a green ocean. In the distance she could see other mountains, their peaks touching clouds. Far below, barely visible through the trees, she thought she could make out a ribbon of road. But no houses. No towns. Nothing but wilderness. They were completely isolated. Emma turned from the window and noticed something she had missed the night before. On the desk, next to the coloring books, sat a piece of paper. Fresh paper. And on it, written in elegant handwriting. "Welcome, Emma and Ethan. You are safe here. Rest. Explore. Everything you need has been provided. When you are ready to know more, go to the tower." Emma's hands trembled as she held the note. Someone knew their names. Someone had been expecting them specifically. She woke Ethan and showed him the message. The tower? Ethan asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I saw it from outside. The tallest part of the castle on the east side. Do we go? Emma thought about it. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, impossible, dangerous. But they had nowhere else to go. And whoever had written this note had provided them shelter, warmth, clothes. They hadn't been harmed. Not yet, she decided. First we explore. We learn this place. Then we decide. They found their way back to the library from the night before. The cookies and milk were gone. In their place sat a breakfast spread that made Emma's stomach clench with hunger. Fresh bread, butter, jam, sliced fruit, orange juice, scrambled eggs still steaming in a covered dish. A note rested beside the food. Please eat. Growing children need proper nutrition. They ate. Emma told herself it was strategic. They needed strength. But the truth was the food was delicious, better than anything they'd had in months, and they were starving. As they ate, Emma studied the library more carefully. The books were old, most of them. Leather bindings with gold lettering. She read some of the titles. The History of Ashford County, Architectural Practices of the Gilded Age, Industrial Fortunes of West Virginia. One book caught her attention. It sat separate from the others on a small table near the fireplace. The leather was darker, newer. Emma opened it carefully. It was a journal. The first entry was dated 1889. September 14, 1889. Construction of Blackwood Castle is complete. It has taken 4 years and more money than I care to calculate, but it stands now as I envisioned it. A fortress. A sanctuary. A place where my children can be safe from the world that has proven so cruel and so unpredictable. Emma turned the page. The handwriting continued, entry after entry, chronicling the life of someone named William Blackwood. She read about his children. Twins. A boy and a girl named Charlotte and Charles. She read about his wife, Margaret, who had died giving birth to them. She read about William's obsession with protecting his children from every possible danger. Then she reached an entry that made her stop breathing. March 3, 1891. They are gone. My Charlotte. My Charles. The fire took them in minutes. The doctor says they felt no pain, but how can he know? How can anyone know what those final moments contained? I built this castle to protect them from the world, but I could not protect them from fate itself. The entries after that grew darker. William Blackwood had descended into grief so profound it seemed to consume him. He fired all his servants. He locked himself in the castle. For months, his journal entries were barely coherent. Then, gradually, a new idea began to emerge in his writing. June 12, 1891. I cannot bring back Charlotte and Charles. But perhaps their death need not be meaningless. This castle was built to protect children. Perhaps it still can. Perhaps there are other children lost and alone who need what I built. Perhaps this is how I honor their memory. Emma flipped through faster now. William Blackwood had established something he called the Silent Sanctuary. He had used his industrial fortune to create a network of people, scattered across several states, who identified children in desperate situations. Orphans about to be separated. Children fleeing abuse. Runaways with nowhere to go. And they were brought here. To Blackwood Castle. Where they were hidden, protected, cared for, until permanent safe homes could be found for them. The children must never see me, one entry read. I have become something less than human in my grief. But I can still provide for them. I can still keep them safe. They will have food, shelter, warmth, education. And when they are ready, they will be placed with families who will love them as I loved my own children. The journal entries stopped in 1923. The final entry was simple. I am dying. The doctor gives me weeks at most. But the sanctuary will continue. I have arranged everything. There are good people, kind people who have agreed to maintain this work after I am gone. The castle will stand. The children will be protected. This is my legacy. This is how Charlotte and Charles live on. Emma set the journal down with shaking hands. What does it say? Ethan asked. She told him. All of it. When she finished, Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, So someone's been doing this for over 100 years? It seems that way. And they brought us here? Emma thought about the timing. How they had run from the group home in the exact direction that led to this castle. How the storm had pushed them upward. How the door had been unlocked. Or they made sure we could find our way here, she said slowly. Over the following days, Emma and Ethan explored the castle methodically. They found 20 bedrooms on the second floor, each one prepared for children of different ages. They found classrooms with desks and chalkboards and shelves full of textbooks. They found a kitchen that somehow always had fresh food waiting for them, though they never saw who prepared it. They found a workshop filled with tools and materials for building and creating. They found an art studio with paints and canvases. They found a gymnasium with equipment for exercise and play. And every night they heard the footsteps. Slow and patient, walking through corridors they weren't in. Always distant. Always just out of sight. Emma began leaving notes in the library, questions written on paper left on the desk. Who are you? The response, in that same elegant handwriting, appeared the next morning. A friend. Someone who wants to help. Why can't we see you? Because some help is best given quietly. Without expectation of gratitude or recognition. What happens to the children who come here? They heal. They grow. And when they are ready, they find families who will love them. But only when they are ready. Never before. Are there other children here now? The answer to that question took longer. Emma found the response 2 days later. Yes. But they are not ready to meet you yet. And you are not ready to meet them. Fear makes us hide from each other. Trust must be earned slowly. Emma read that response to Ethan as they sat in the library. Outside, rain fell again, gentler this time, tapping against the windows like fingers asking to be let in. Do you trust them? Ethan asked. Emma thought about it. I don't know. But I trust this place more than I trusted the group home. Here, nobody's trying to separate us. That night, Emma lay awake listening to the castle settle around her. She heard the footsteps again, but they no longer frightened her. She heard other sounds too. Distant voices, soft and young. Other children, somewhere in the castle's vast interior. She thought about her parents. About the accident. About how quickly a life could change from safe and normal to shattered and lost. She thought about William Blackwood, building a castle to protect his children, then losing them anyway. And instead of letting that loss destroy him completely, he had transformed it into something else. A way to protect other people's children. Emma made a decision. The next morning she told Ethan, we're going to the tower. The tower entrance was exactly where the original note had said it would be. A heavy wooden door at the end of the east corridor, with iron hinges and a handle shaped like a lion's head. Emma turned the handle. The door wasn't locked. A spiral staircase wound upward into darkness. Candles lit themselves as Emma and Ethan climbed, flames sparking to life as if sensing their approach. Up and up they went until Emma's legs ached and her breathing came hard. Finally, the stairs ended at another door. This one was locked. But hanging from the handle was a key on a silver chain. And attached to the key was a note. You have shown patience. You have shown trust. You are ready now. Enter and understand. Emma's hands shook as she fitted the key into the lock. She turned it. The mechanism clicked. She pushed the door open. The tower room was circular, with tall windows offering views of the forest in every direction. But Emma barely noticed the views. The room was filled with children. 7 of them, ranging in age from about 6 to 13. They sat in chairs arranged in a circle, and they all turned to look at Emma and Ethan with expressions that mixed hope and fear. And standing among them, the only adult in the room, was a woman. She was elderly, perhaps 70, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore simple clothes, a gray dress and practical shoes. But her eyes were kind. Deeply, unmistakably kind. Welcome Emma and Ethan, she said. Her voice was soft but clear. My name is Margaret Blackwood. I am William's great-granddaughter. And I have been waiting for you. Emma found her voice. How did you know we would come? Margaret smiled. Because I have people watching. Good people, working in group homes and foster systems and social services across 3 states. When they see children in danger of being separated or harmed, they let me know. And we create opportunities. A door left unlocked. A path made clear. A storm to provide cover. She gestured to the other children. Everyone here came the same way. Running from something. Searching for something. And finding this place. A boy about 11 years old spoke up. I ran from a foster home where they locked me in the basement. His voice was steady, but Emma could see the shadow of trauma in his eyes. A girl of 8 added, I was going to be sent to a family in another state. Away from my brother. She reached out and held hands with a boy who looked exactly like her. More twins. One by one the children shared their stories. Abuse. Neglect. Systems that failed them. And all of them had found their way here. How long do they stay? Emma asked. As long as they need, Margaret replied. Some children heal quickly. Others need months. A few have been here for years. We provide education, therapy, safety. And when they are truly ready, We place them with families who have been carefully vetted. Families who will love them. Who will never separate siblings. Who will give them the lives they deserve. Ethan spoke for the first time. And you do all this? Just you? Margaret shook her head. I have help. 23 people across the region who dedicate their lives to this work. Some provide funding. Some identify children in need. Some arrange the placements. And some, like me, provide the sanctuary itself. She walked to the window and looked out at the forest. William Blackwood believed that his children's deaths had to mean something. He believed that loss could be transformed into love. That grief could become protection. This castle is that transformation made real. Emma felt tears building behind her eyes. And we can stay? Together? For as long as you need, Margaret said. Nobody will separate you. I promise. Emma looked at the other children. At Ethan. At this strange, impossible place that had appeared exactly when they needed it most. What if someone comes looking for us? She asked. Margaret's expression grew serious. They already have. The group home reported you missing. The police searched the forest for 3 days. But they don't know about the castle. The road that leads here isn't on any modern map. The property records are buried under layers of old paperwork. To the world outside, this place doesn't exist. She turned back to Emma and Ethan. You are ghosts now. Both of you. And ghosts can't be found unless they want to be. Over the following weeks, Emma and Ethan integrated into the castle's strange community. They attended classes taught by Margaret, who had been a teacher before dedicating herself to the sanctuary. They played with the other children in the gymnasium and the castle grounds. They read hundreds of books from the vast library. And slowly, Emma felt something she hadn't felt since before her parents died. Safety. She learned the other children's stories in greater depth. Marcus, the 11-year-old who had been locked in basements, was brilliant with machines. He spent hours in the workshop, building intricate mechanical devices. Sarah and Samuel, the 8-year-old twins, were inseparable and spoke in a language of gestures and half-sentences that only they understood. There was Lucy, 13, who had run from a trafficking situation and now wrote poetry that made Emma cry. There were 6-year-old twins named Hope and Faith, who had been found abandoned in a parking lot and giggled constantly as if making up for lost time. Each child carried wounds. But here in the castle, those wounds were treated with patience and care. Margaret arranged for doctors to visit in secret. For therapists who specialized in childhood trauma. For teachers who understood that some days, learning meant just being allowed to exist without pressure. Emma began to understand that the sanctuary wasn't just a hiding place. It was a hospital for broken childhoods. 3 months after arriving, Emma received news that made her heart stop. Margaret called her to the tower room. I wanted you to hear this from me, she said gently. We found a family. A couple in Vermont. They're in their 40s. They lost their daughter and son in a car accident 5 years ago. Twins. They've been looking for the right children ever since. Emma's first instinct was panic. We're not ready. I know, Margaret said. That's why I'm telling you now, not asking you to leave now. They're willing to wait. To write letters. To build a relationship slowly. You'll meet them when you're ready. Not before. And they want both of us? They won't even consider separating you. That's non-negotiable. Over the following months, Emma and Ethan exchanged letters with the couple, Daniel and Rebecca Foster. They learned about the Fosters' lives. Their home. Their interests. Their grief over their lost children. Their hope that maybe, somehow, they could offer another set of twins the love they couldn't give their own anymore. The letters were honest. Real. And slowly, Emma began to trust. She asked Margaret, how do you know they're good people? We've been vetting them for 2 years, Margaret replied. We've investigated every aspect of their lives. Finances, relationships, mental health, criminal records, references from dozens of sources. We don't make mistakes with placements. Not ever. 6 months after arriving at the castle, Emma and Ethan met the Fosters for the first time. The meeting took place in the library with Margaret present. Emma's hands were shaking so hard she had to sit on them. Daniel and Rebecca Foster were exactly as their letters suggested. Warm. Patient. Sad in the way that people who have lost children are always sad. But hopeful too. They didn't push. They didn't make promises they couldn't keep. They just talked. About small things. Books. Favorite foods. What Emma and Ethan might want to study in school. At the end of the visit, Rebecca asked gently, would you be willing to visit our home? Just for a weekend. To see if it feels right. No pressure. No commitment. Emma looked at Ethan. He nodded slightly. Okay, Emma said. We can try. The weekend visit became 2 weeks. The 2 weeks became a month. And gradually, Emma realized something that surprised her. She felt safe with the Fosters. Different from the castle, but safe in a new way. The safety of belonging to people who wanted her specifically. Who chose her and Ethan deliberately. When Margaret asked if they were ready to make the placement permanent, Emma cried. Not from sadness but from relief. Yes, she said. We're ready. The night before they left the castle, Margaret gathered all the children in the tower room. Emma and Ethan are leaving tomorrow, she announced. They found their family. The other children clapped. Lucy wiped tears from her eyes. Marcus gave them a mechanical puzzle box he had built himself. Sarah and Samuel hugged them so tightly Emma could barely breathe. You'll be okay? Hope asked in her tiny voice. We'll be okay, Emma promised. Margaret handed Emma a leather journal. This is for you. To record your life. To remember where you came from. And maybe, someday, to pass on to someone else who needs to know that broken things can be made whole again. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She wandered the castle one last time, memorizing the corridors and rooms that had saved her life. She found herself in the library, where she had first read William Blackwood's journal. On impulse, she opened it again to the final entry. But there was something new. A page she hadn't seen before, added in different handwriting. Margaret's handwriting. September 2025. Emma and Ethan arrived tonight. The 147th and 148th children the sanctuary has protected since my great-grandfather's death. Watching them sleep in the room prepared for them, I thought of Charlotte and Charles. I thought of how death can become life if we're brave enough to transform our grief into service. William believed that love doesn't end when a person dies. It simply changes form. It becomes the love we show to others in their memory. Emma and Ethan will leave us soon. They will go to good people. They will be loved. And they will carry with them the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, there are places of light. People who care. Systems built on compassion instead of cruelty. The castle will stand. The work will continue. And the children will always have a sanctuary when they need one. Emma closed the journal carefully. She left a note of her own on the desk. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for keeping us together. Thank you for showing us that the world still has good people in it. We will never forget this place. And someday when we're grown, we'll find a way to help other children the way you helped us. The next morning, Daniel and Rebecca Foster arrived in their car. Emma and Ethan packed the few belongings they had accumulated. Clothes, books, Marcus's puzzle box, letters from the other children. As they walked toward the castle entrance, Emma looked back one last time. The other children stood in the doorway waving. Margaret stood with them, her silver hair catching the morning light. The castle rose behind them, impossible and real, secret and sacred. Emma raised her hand in farewell. And then she turned toward the future. The car drove down the overgrown road, away from the mountain, toward Vermont and a new life. Emma held Ethan's hand in the back seat. Neither of them spoke. But Emma knew they would be okay. Because they had learned something in that castle that would stay with them forever. They had learned that when the world breaks you, there are people who will gather the pieces and help you rebuild. Not because they expect something in return, but because they understand brokenness. Because they've been broken too. They had learned that families aren't always made of blood. Sometimes they're made of choice. Of compassion. Of people who see children in need and decide to become their sanctuary. And they had learned that the best way to honor those who save you is to someday become someone who saves others. Emma opened the journal Margaret had given her. On the first blank page she wrote, "My name is Emma. This is my brother, Ethan. We are 9 years old. 3 months ago we ran from a place that wanted to separate us. We found a castle in the storm. It was not empty. And because it wasn't empty we survived. This is our story. This is what we will remember. And this is what we will, someday, pass on." The car drove on through the mountains carrying 2 children toward a home that waited for them. Behind them, hidden in the forest on a peak that appeared on no modern maps, Blackwood Castle stood silent. Inside its walls, other children healed. Other wounds closed. Other broken lives were carefully, patiently, lovingly rebuilt. The sanctuary endured. Just as William Blackwood had intended. Just as grief transformed into grace always does. And somewhere in the tower room, Margaret Blackwood lit candles for the children who remained, and for the children who would come, and for the children who had left to build new lives. The castle was never empty. It was full of second chances. Full of hope made solid in stone and mortar. Full of proof that even in a world that could be cruel and unfair, there were still places where kindness ruled. Where children were protected. where twins were never separated, where the lost could be found.